I'm Emmelyn, and I'm actually originally from Austin. So like James, I lived and worked here for quite a long time, and then I moved away and still away, and so it's really amazing to be back here. I live in Fort Worth, Texas, and if you want to see real Texas, come up and visit. So come up and talk to me after, because my career as an API strategist started off as an independent strategist, and so I've cut my teeth on API support, API documentation, developer engagement, community management right here in Texas. I'm part of a team at Axway called the Catalysts, and many of you may have been in Matthew's talk earlier with Hoopy, where he talked about champion programs, and our Catalyst program is just that. It's like a center of innovation. So let's do the numbers. So how many of you listen to NPR radio? We got to do the numbers, right? So the number that I'm most proud of is, it's a conservative one, and we'll get an updated one, is that we actually process and manage over 65 billion API calls. And that's something that's very exciting to us because you're building APIs, you're doing amazing things out in the world, and as a company that creates API management software, we're very excited to be a part of that. So I designed my slides for you to take home. So many of you might be in companies where you don't have an API program yet. And you have to talk to senior leadership about how to fund that program and how to build a program. And so this iceberg model is particularly important because most companies say, if they're not an API-first company, I'm sorry, but we don't do APIs. We don't expose APIs. And what's important is if you have a website or any kind of native mobile app, you do, in fact, have public-facing APIs. And so this slide deck is to help you to take these stories and use cases home to maybe as a product manager, explain to leadership, actually, we do need to think more about our APIs. Why? Here's another reason why. So there were many security experts that talked on the stage today and mentioned you have to design with security in mind. And so I'm a huge fan of David McCandless, who takes data, and this is actually an interactive visualization. You can filter by year. There are so many data breaches because we don't design APIs with security in mind. And many of these are huge names, right? You've got LinkedIn, and you've got companies all over the world, including companies like Sony, that are having issues because they don't design maybe that particular business unit with security in mind. I also talk to small business owners, so I'll just be walking around the world, usually at an API conference like this one, and someone will say, "What do you do?" And I'll say, well, I love talking about APIs because I've been on teams that built them, and I've worked at a Berkshire Hathaway company as a director where we consumed them to do digital marketing. And so they would say, well, great. Well, as a small business owner, what can I do? And I say, give me 10 minutes. You can actually build an API yourself, and that you can even use it for your business. And so that gets small business owners really excited because they realize they can now compete with larger platforms and companies. So this is something that I wrote. Now this is where we get into kind of the 50,000-foot level, where you're trying to explain to maybe your C-level leadership why APIs are important for your business to get more investment in them. So even though each of these shapes are equal, each topic here is not, and I'll explain why. So all of us have been talking about the landscape, and I was trying to put my head around what does that look like, and how do you connect your API program and your project and your platform and your ecosystem and economy. And to get from platform to platform and from platforms to form ecosystems and this economy, you actually need to connect them with APIs. And so this is an ecosystem view that I created for WeWork. So WeWork has multiple platforms. They also acquired Meetup. And each one of these squares represents one of their platforms, if you will, their programs, etc. And they're able to connect these, and they're actually a market leader. However, what's interesting about this is they don't want other co-working spaces to take their market leadership position, right? And so I'll explain in a little bit how they protect that. So some of the concepts that I have here are these patterns that you can take home, or if you're a API product manager, that you can use to design your APIs. So basically, taking APIs and connecting your platforms in a way where you use network effects to reduce the fact that maybe people might leave your platform. And so I use these different economies to illustrate that, because I'm trying to learn more about these economies as I go. So what happened was I took this picture, credited to Investor Daily, where they mentioned the Alibaba economy. And I said, how can I understand that? Because I've never lived in China. I live here in the US, and I want to understand what that looks like here on the ground. And so if you look at it, Amazon's economy is a lot like Alibaba's economy, because what business are they not in, right? And so then you can connect this further to Texas, because you've got 7-Eleven, which is a Japanese company, but the headquarters is actually in Dallas, Texas, and their economy is a lot like Amazon and Alibaba, and in fact, they're competing with them on a global level, to the point where 7-Eleven does not use Amazon's cloud products, they use the other cloud products, because they're competing with Amazon's cloud products. And that's important because as people develop APIs, you're very cognizant about who owns the other products that you're connecting with, which brings us to API maturity. So I'm a major believer in the fact that if you design and you're thoughtful about your approach, but it's not an afterthought, and this includes things like documentation and readiness, like Bo was talking about earlier, the more that you think ahead about it, the better your outcome will be, because you're not just treating your API as an afterthought. So the pain that I experienced working in R&D and supporting developers integrating was just seeing the fact that, okay, we tested the API, yes, it tested well, smoke testing, et cetera, but out in the wild, people are maybe using the API in ways that you've never thought of. And so back to the WeWork example. So WeWork as a co-working space has the most complete digital apps and experience, and that's actually one of the reasons why they're a market leader. And one of their platform traits is they have there's like a black card that you get as a member, one app, one way. By the way, I don't use or endorse or am I employed by WeWork, but I just thought that this example really supported what I was seeing. And so to protect against these network effects that I mentioned, they actually don't have a developer program or portal, nor do they expose their APIs. But their developers do contribute to the open source community. So they're building that credibility. And so here's more pictures about how they're using their APIs in a native environment to build that platform. And so the next few slides are, again, for you and your executive team, because strategy is not implementation. And so how do you lock that creation into your platform if that's what you're trying to do? How do you incentivize them? And then the source of this is actually a Harvard Business Review article about network effects. And then this is actually visually what it looks like. So Airbnb is global, and so it's more protected, and it's harder to replicate Airbnb because it's global. Whereas with Uber, as you've been seeing with the wars around the world, like I was just in Singapore, Grab won because they were able to buy out Uber. And so I want to now talk about the fitness world and those platforms. So there's an app called ClassPass. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. And you can basically use ClassPass to go to almost any gym or workout in the world, right? And so that particular platform is interesting because it's all about user acquisition. And when you go to an Orange Theory Fitness, like I do, you're able to really get the value of your membership. And then that fitness studio, if they're not a big brand, they now are able to use ClassPass to then follow up via digital marketing and try to build up their community that way. And so it's a membership that's really challenging traditional gyms and fitness programs. Same thing with the Mind-Body Developers Program. They're a lot like ClassPass, where they're giving the behind-the-scenes technology for you to say you wanted to open a local gym. You can now connect and use that information. Several more slides. I'm kind of going to zip through it because these are all examples, again, for you to take home. Now I'm going to go to this one. So I'm wearing this ring. It's called an aura. And what's interesting about this is they're not trying to lock value into their platform. So they actually have Aura Cloud, where I can take their data and then I can put it in the dashboard to live with the other health data that I have. And so that's exciting because it's also sleep data. And today, at least in the US, we have too many apps to manage too many things, and it's really difficult. And so Lady Ada, for example, I'm using her code samples here, showed how you can unlock this data. Another example of a platform, so this is financial. So basically, a lot of financial platforms, because they're not as mature as WeWorks, and so, for example, typically streaming APIs is going to be your stock trader APIs, but then they've got their request response APIs. And it's tricky because you have to log in one place to do your trading and another place to do your banking. And so what some companies are doing is they're trying to put that experience all in one platform. And so these, again, are words more for leadership, but these are ways that you can help convince your company to invest in an API program and why, at a very high level, it's important. And then I sum it up, so I'll make these slides available to everyone. But the one that I wanted to get to are these last few slides. So come talk to me about e-commerce APIs, or distribution, or independent API strategy work. I think there are many people who are developer advocates who would like to do this kind of work. And so, I'd love to chat with you about how to do that. And these are the kinds of scenarios that I can speak to: IP licensing, partnership programs. So this was me in Dubai last year. And then now I want to get to something that I'm really passionate about, which is the Async API community. So I'm a contributor, and I invite all of you to come contribute. As you know, it's pretty young. We have a release candidate version 2 just out. And I'm about to release an article that compares OpenAPI with event-driven. And so here's kind of the comparison between OAS and Async API 2. And again, we'd love for you to join and also talk to us about the catalysts. My fellow colleague, John Weiss, he's also a catalyst, and he's here at the Axway table. And feel free to ask any questions. So, thank you.